Hello guys, it's me Kisuke Urahara, and in this video I'll talk about the possibility of a third release of Zanpakuto and also about the new form of Kisuke Urahara in Bleach Brave Souls, which has been described as a power greater than Bankai. Frankly, I wanted to talk about this form because I found it almost similar to the ideas that I have said in this video when I talked about Urahara's Bankai, and I said that I find it to be unsuitable for him in many ways. So before we talk about the Bankai of Urahara or his new form, we must ask an important question, which is there a release other than Shikai and Bankai that we can consider as a third release of Zanpakuto? Frankly, for me, the answer to this question cannot be decided by yes or no, because throughout the manga's chapters there was never a word about a third release of Zanpakuto. We all remember how Yorichi told Ichigo that there is a second release of Zanpakuto other than Shikai, which is Bankai, and she didn't add that there is a third release. And when Ichigo wanted to release Bankai, he uses the term Shinochi, which means the true blade, which might indicate that the Bankai stage is the one that allows the Zanpakuto to show its full power. We must take into account that it was Ichigo who named things in the Soul Society, meaning he named the Zanpakuto Zanpakuto, Shikai Shikai, and Bankai Bankai, and thus if there was another release other than Bankai, it is certain that Ichigo would have known it and he would give it a name, and thus it would be like a third release. And here I'm not denying the possibility of a third release, but I'm speaking from an official perspective. Even in the game they didn't give us the name of that form power, they just say it is stronger power than Shika, than Bankai. But on the other hand, there are few hints in the story that indicate that the Shinigami can reach great levels of strength beyond Bankai. I mean here Diffusion with the Zanpakuto, for example. If you notice, when the Shinigami fight with their Zanpakuto, many of them use the Zanpakuto as an external weapon only, and some of them take precautions to avoid any side effects of their Zanpakuto, such as Byakuya, who puts a safety zone around himself, or Zaraki, who uses Nozarashi as a huge sword, while some of them have their Zanpakuto, I will not say partially integrated with them, but related to their body, such as the Bankai of Toshiro, Yamamoto, Renji, and even the old Bankai of Ichigo. But as a total fusion with the Zanpakuto, it doesn't happen completely, because this tape is very dangerous. For example, when Yamamoto launched the West Zanka no Tachi, he said that both his body and blade enveloped by the sun, and that if he continues to release the Bankai, he will destroy himself and everything because of this power. And this can be said about Toshiro too. In one of Kobo's answers about what would happen if Toshiro wanted to release the Bankai in its full form before he mastered his Bankai, Kobo said that Toshiro would have suffered a very great damage. Even the 8th Kenpachi Azashiro Soya, whose Bankai abilities are linked to his body, if he is fused with something and it's subjected to any attack that absorbs the Ryatsu, this may cause him a lot of damage, because Azashiro at that stage becomes literally fused with his Bankai. And that's why even when Ichigo wanted to implement the technique of Final Getsuga Tensho, the price was high. He sacrificed his Shinigami power to do this technique. And there is a clear example that shows how dangerous this operation can be, like what happened to the Shinigami Vision. And for those who don't know this character, it was mentioned in the second OVA of Bleach. And so, according to the OVA story, he was a Shinigami, and because he wanted to develop his Zanpakuto and gain more power, somehow he merged with his Zanpakuto, and so that he and his Zanpakuto became one person. And through this, he gained great strength and killed so many vice captains and officers, to the point that 2 captains sacrificed by themselves to save him. And actually, I don't care whether these events are canon or not, but the important thing in this story is Baishin's fusion with his Zanpakuto. When Baishin merged with the Zanpakuto, he became in a real dilemma. It is true that his Zanpakuto abilities were combined with him, so that he was fighting without the need for a Zanpakuto, and he had the ability to absorb the Ryatsu of others, But more than that, he could release the Bankai without a name or using a sword. But at the same time, he wasn't able to get rid of this fusion, and that's why he was trying to fight someone to save him from this dilemma. And this confirms that the issue of fusion with the Zanpakuto is not easy. Baishin's case is almost that we have in the manga with Aizen Sosuke, and after his fight with Ichigo, the Hogyoku enabled Aizen to fuse with his Zanpakuto, and so the Zanpakuto abilities became one of Aizen's natural powers. We noticed how he manipulated Yuabach using the Kyoka's Wiggets, but on the other hand, the nature of Kyoka's Wiggets helps Aizen in that, because it's not a physical power but rather sensual, and thus this change doesn't appear in the shape of Aizen, unlike what happened to Baishin. So maybe we can say that the fusion with the Zanpakuto can be like a third release. If a Shikai requires you to contact your Zanpakuto and to have a Bankai you must submit your Zanpakuto, certainly the third release will require much more than that, because when Baishin merged with his Zanpakuto, he was unable to return to his normal state, and for Aizen Sosuke, as I said, the Hogyoku was the reason why he merged with Kyoka's Wiggets, and when Ichigo was in the final Getsuga Tensho mode, the prize was the loss of his powers. For this, I think if the fusion with the Zanpakuto will be like a third release, Nimaya must develop an Asauchi or some technique that will make the Shinigami able to embody their powers that they may not be able to activate at the Bankai level, especially for strong Shinigami. And before Nimaya gave them this new sword, Ichibi will give it a certain name, and by that the Shinigami officially will be able to release a third release with a specific name. So back to Urahara Kisuke's new form, which is more powerful than his Bankai. I can't say that this form, it should have been his Bankai form in the manga. In this video I said that my problem with Urahara's Bankai is represented in two important points. Urahara's Bankai deprives him of his Shinigami techniques, so we have seen how the Bankai made his sword in the sealed form, and we all know how special Benihime in the Shikai mode, especially in long range attacks as well as forming defensive shields. And I said that the Bankai should have kept these good features. And the second point is the huge size of the Bankai, which makes Kisuke more vulnerable to attack, and I set the example with Mayuri's Bankai. That's why this new form, they put almost the same ideas that I wanted to see. First, as you can see, in this form we see the Zanpakuto of Urahara in its Shikai mode, and this is what I was saying it should be. And second, and the most important, is that the hand behind Urahara is better than the body of the woman behind him in the Bankai, so that these fingers of the hand enabled Kisuke to carry out long range attacks such as the Shikai, as well as play the same role as Bankai. In addition, unlike the woman, this hand enables Kisuke to move freely and perform more accurate attacks, such as the attack he does in the gameplay. And the most important thing is that Urahara's body becomes the embodiment of the woman that in Bankai in terms of structure, and this is like merging with the Zanpakuto that we talked about it a while ago, and by that he can reshape his body parts and make them stronger and more flexible. And this is what I like the most, in the sense that Kisuke Urahara in any particular fight will not need the Bankai to treat him, but he will personally treat himself and restructure any damage while he's fighting. Also, the method of executing long range attacks through the use of either his hand or his hand with the Zanpakuto is a great movement that goes with how Kisuke fights, especially as he is master in Kido and often depends on Kido attacks using his hands. So imagine with me if he could carry out Kido attacks using that hand behind his back. It would be a great thing. Kido technique combined with the power of the Zanpakuto. That's why, as I said, I would love if this new form was his Bankai and we see him in the manga and not in the game. But who knows, this may be a hint from Kobo about the possibility of the Shinigami reaching a third release that we may see in the events of the Hell arc, if Kobo plans to complete this arc and make it a little bit longer. And if he wants really to do that, he needs to develop the power of the Shinigami, especially since we know most of the Bankai and how their abilities work. So this is the end of my video, guys. Tell me your opinions in the comments and see you in my next video.